So I guess I can talk about recovery actions while I'm here since I've already talked about it. Obviously you want to perform recovery actions to make sure you're not on the ground, to give your opponent less time to put pressure on you. So how do you perform a recovery? Well, if the opponent knocks you down, you want to hold down on the controller and hit any of the 3 attack buttons as you hit the ground. In fact, you can just kind of hit all 3 of them just to make sure, and you will always perform the recovery. Now, if you hold down and do this, you'll perform the short recovery. But if I hold back and all of these buttons, I perform the back recovery. So that is how you perform the distinction between the two. During the recovery animation, you are not vulnerable. If anything's hitting you while you perform these recoveries, you will bounce through them. But as soon as you finish the recovery, you are vulnerable again, so you'll have to be careful. So that's why you want to perform this, is because you can't get hit during that recovery, and you can build some distance from your opponent, land on your feet, and get back to attacking again. But again, if my opponent performs, for example, an EX uppercut or a skill plus, no amount of mashing is going to allow me to do a recovery. Nothing I can do can get me to perform a recovery. Also, I want to note that everybody's crouching unique attack is also something that you cannot recover off of. So that's why this is also a powerful tool. There is nothing you can do about this. If they hit you with this and they have a setup, you have to deal with the setup. And the third one that you cannot recover from are throws. If your opponent throws you, you also cannot perform a quick recovery at all, neither direction. So that's a third option that the opponents have to allow themselves to set up against you. It's going to be EX moves, throws, and crouching unique attacks. If you get hit by any of these things, you cannot perform a quick recovery. And if you're ever wondering if you could have teched it or not, because some moves will have special properties where you can't perform a recovery, also known as tech. I call it teching by habit because old fighting game nomenclature. But if you're wondering if you can perform a recovery off of a move, the game also tells you as well. If you ever get hit by a move where you cannot perform a recovery, it's going to say down on your side of the screen over there. So as soon as you see down, that means you cannot perform the recovery action at all. So you see down written over there. So that's also a nice way to tell. So if you get hit by a move and you're like, well, I should have recovered off of that. If you see down, that's an indication that you are unable to recover off of that. There is one more type of recovery that exists in the game. And it's very going to be similar to the ground recoveries, except this one is an aerial recovery. This one you don't actually have to input anything. It happens for you automatically just when a combo stops in the air, whether you just can't keep hitting the opponent anymore, or there's a system in place in the game that they call a combo limit so that the opponent can't get hit anymore. But you'll see the opponent recover out of the air. They'll do a bounce similar to the ground bounce when they hit the ground out of the air, and it's just like the ground bounce too. If you look at the actual ground bounce one, they hit the ground, their hand touches the ground, they bounce back, they're invincible until they land on their feet. Well, the aerial one just makes them bounce out of the air. You won't see their hand plant on the ground, they just bounce out of the air, but again, invincible all the way till they land on the ground on their feet. So for example, if I do something like this, you'll see that even though it was really close to the ground there, that was an aerial recovery. So it was actually a different kind of recovery. There, perfect example right there. You saw how high she was and she flipped out of the air and landed to the ground. The aerial recovery, again, does not require you to hit any buttons. It happens automatically. However, you are invincible all the way until you land on your feet, but the problem is the opponent can move. You don't have any movement options or anything. You're forced to fall all the way to the ground and land on your feet, so the opponent does have the ability to continue pressure while you're landing. And you'll see some sequences where players will actually set that up on purpose and make you recover in the air so that you fall into their attacks. But it is another different form of recovery to go alongside the ground recovery. It's just you have sometimes don't have the option. You just don't have the option to not air recover. So some people may ask, you know, for the ground recovery, why would I not want to ground recover at all? Why would I ever want to let myself fall to the ground and stay there? Most of the time, you're not going to. If you can quick recover, if you can, you know, perform the ground tech, you're going to want to do that as much as possible. There might be some setups in the game where the opponent purposely tries to put something on top of you so that you get up into it and have to block if you do a ground recovery. That if you don't do a ground recovery, you kind of mess up their setup a little bit, but at the same time, that still allows the opponent plenty of time to improvise and still set up on you. So for the most part, if you can perform a ground recovery, you're going to want to do that as much as possible.